Good morning, brethren.
Good morning.
Good morning.
A happy Sabbath to you.
Sabbath to you.
Cocky and good-looking, Trevor Bullock was the man. He was a star pitcher, the life of the party, and the girls loved him. Drugs and alcohol were easy to come by in high school, even though his dad was the narcotics captain at the local police department. But that didn't faze Trevor. Smooth talking was yet another one of his golden talents. Baseball was his life, and he figured he deserved all the perks that came with it. But God had something else in mind for his wayward child. It just took a while to get his attention. Over the next few years, Trevor went to college, played ball, went to church sometimes, partied, was baptized, got thrown in jail, signed with the Philadelphia Phillies baseball organization, and met a girl. The girl. But for some reason, Trevor's relationship with Carissa married his off-and-on relationship with God. But God was still calling the game. He just had to convince Trevor to quit shaking him off. Brethren, there's a book called Brush Back. It's a book that I held on for about a year and a half, and was able to read it this past Feast of Tabernacles. There's also an article that went along with it from a different perspective. Trevor Bullock was a star pitcher in the minor leagues for the Philadelphia Phillies organization. By the time he was to enter into the actual majors, he had to make a major decision in his life, whether to keep God's Sabbath day holy or whether just to keep it during the off season, because it was very difficult to play baseball and to keep the Sabbath. So he had a decision to make, brethren, but he found himself, in the end, brushed back by Christ, and then brushed back for Christ. The brushback is a pitch, brethren, in baseball. It's where the pitcher throws a ball close to a batter, it's usually high inside, and it's the fastball. It's about 96 miles per hour. To brush the batter back from the plate to give the pitcher greater control over the strike zone. Usually the batter wants to intimidate the pitcher, but a good pitcher, when he throws that ball close enough to the batter, he actually intimidates the batter. Though Trevor Bullock was a pitcher, he was the one who actually threw brush-back pitches. It was he who had to have a change of mind and a change of attitude, who actually had to be brushed back. Trevor Bullock was born and raised in Lincoln, Nebraska, and at the age of 6, he started to play baseball. It all began with t-ball, and then into the little leagues, and then by high school, though he played other sports such as football, he wanted to preserve his arm. He was a lefty. He grew to like 6'2", 190 pounds, left-handed pitcher. He had some very impressive stats. He was pretty dangerous as well. Pretty dangerous on the mound, on the mound, that is. However, he did come from a split religious home. His dad had no religious affiliation at all. His mother is still a Seventh-day Adventist. Since Trevor was born, his mother used to bring Trevor to services for 14 straight years. At the age of 14, she said, "Son, you're going to have to start making up your own mind. Do you want to come or not?" And he did, occasionally. Eventually, he went on to college after high school, where he pitched continually. And after about maybe 4.5 to 5 years of college, he was drafted by the Philadelphia Phillies baseball organization, and he began to play in the minor leagues. Brethren, in reading this book, I've come to two main conclusions. I think there are two concepts that are brought to pass in this book. One is to be brushed back by Christ, which is to have our mind open to the changes we need to make in our individual lives in order to be useful servants of the living God. The second point, brethren, is to be brushed back for Christ. That is, where we persevere in our calling, we continue to keep we seek and to apply and to grow in the knowledge of God's way of life, to keep His commandments, to have the desire to serve His work, and to enjoy our relationships with one another every Sabbath day, and to do so, to persevere even during trials and tribulations. On this first point, brethren, though this may be a bit of a wild pitch, I when I read the scriptures and I see some of the apostles, I see some of the apostles as being brushed back. I think the apostle Paul himself in particular. In Acts 26:14, the apostle Paul, in just one verse, brings this to pass. Now, the apostle Paul was a very intelligent man. He was brought up at the feet of one of the teachers of the law in Jerusalem. He was a man, however, who actually crowded the plate. He wanted to take control of his calling, of his relationship with God, and it was God who actually had to brush him back. In Acts 26:14, we see, and when we had all fallen to the ground, and brethren, when a pitcher gives a brush back pitch, occasionally the batter will fall to the ground, because that's how powerful those balls come in. They come in at 96 miles per hour. You don't want to be hit by one of those balls. Occasionally, you're brushed back, and you may actually fall down. But the Apostle Paul says, I heard a voice speaking to me and saying in the Hebrew language, and this was a language that Paul understood. Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? And this is a kicker here. It says, it is hard for you to kick against the goads. It's hard for you to continue to persevere in going in a direction that I don't want you to go in, or to do things that I don't want you to do. It's hard for you to persevere in that way and in that manner. So, very much like Trevor Bullock had to make an important decision in his life, not to continue to go in a more traditional manner that he was used to. And the second point, brethren, which is to be brushed back for Christ, I'd like to turn to Romans 5, 2 through 4. It was at this time in his life, brethren, that not before making the decision to keep God's Sabbath day holy. It was afterwards that the majority of temptations came into Trevor Bullock's life. He had been offered a certain amount of opportunity and hope for lucrative contracts previously before coming into the majors, but he turned all of those down. It was afterwards that the temptations came further and further greater. But he received more and more offers from more and more teams, and he actually suffered a bit of a hardship with his dad. His dad looked at him and said, son, from the age of 6 to the age of 25, the only thing that's been on your mind was baseball. You know it so well, and you're excellent, and you know it better than anybody else. Why don't you go back for one more year? Keep the Sabbath in your off season. Keep the Sabbath when you can. Get that signing bonus. And then quit. At least make up for all the 19 years that you've spent, playing baseball. Trevor said no. He said no. Romans 5, 2 through 4. Through whom also we have access, that is, through Christ Jesus, we have access by faith into this grace in which we stand and rejoice in hope of the glory of God. And not only that, not after we have been brushed back by Christ, not only that, but we also glory in tribulations, knowing that tribulation produces perseverance, and perseverance character, and character hope. Once Trevor Bullock left baseball, he had no idea what to do. He was really left as, what do I do now? So he needed a lot of hope. Brush Back. It's a book by Ethan and Martin Fowler, the Trevor Bullock story. It's 186 pages. Though it was written in 2009, Mr. Trevor Bullock, I think, left baseball in 2001 or 2002. That's when he left. He decided not to sign that contract, which would prevent him from following his faith. Now, this is not just a book, of course, about a young man growing up. Though it's written for at an 8th grade level, which means I did not have too much difficulty reading it. It, however, does play on some major themes about a young man growing up and at the age of 25 making that decision, which nagged him for about 11 years. From the age of 14 to 25, it just nagged him. He couldn't get it out of his mind. It's also a love story. Yes, it's a love story. Because he meets that girl called Carissa Dunn. And he used to tell Carissa everything she needed to know about the Sabbath. Carissa told him everything he needed to know about keeping it. Presently, I believe Mr. Trevor Bullock went on to finish his degree, actually, in business, went on to get a master's degree, became successful in his field, married Carissa, and they have presently 2 children. There's also an article called Stepping Off the Mound. Stepping Off the Mound by Amanda Sauter. It says, stepping off the mound, Trevor Bullock realized there were more important things in life than baseball, and that was to put his faith into practice. I'd like to just reiterate those 2 points, brethren. When you and I were called, we were brushed back by Christ. Our mind was open to God's way of life, to his commandments, and we had to make a decision. To keep his commandments, to do what he says, to make it every Sabbath day. And we had to put aside some secular pursuits. I began reading one of the church literatures at the age of 18. It wasn't until I was 25 that I came in. It took me 7 years. It took me 7 years to get my act together, to make that decision. But on the second point, brethren, is that after we are brushed back by Christ and our mind is open, and we begin to go forward in the direction that God wants us to go in, and we're baptized, we realize that's when the tribulations can begin. That's when the trials really begin. So we've become brushed back for Christ. We need to step up to the batter's box. After we've been brushed back originally at our own secular pursuits, we need to get back into that batter's box, face the pitcher, and occasionally in life, take those pitches which seem to come awfully close to us. So let us remember, brethren, that in our calling, we have been brushed back by Christ, and that afterwards we need to continue to follow, persevere in his ways throughout trials and tribulations. This book is available to any of the young people who would like to read it. You may read it and we'll keep it. And if anyone that would like to read the article or have the article, you may, especially those who do not have internet access or printers.